Well, I got to tell you the truth. I am feeling a little bit crazy because that's gaslighting. That is gaslighting. The CIA took out a CIA officer. The gay kid in his basement, the weird gay kid in his basement is the CIA. Taking out the CIA officer running for Congress that got $1 million from Peter Thiel, a CIA contractor, who, when he lost, was defended by Max Blumenthal, whose dad was an intelligence broker for Bill and Hillary Clinton. You know, it's like that meme of Spider-Man. Everybody's calling everybody else a Fed, but I think this one's pretty cut and dry. Who is CIA here? The CIA officer or the guy that made him lose the election? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a difficult question. So that is the story on Joe Kent.
Hey guys, oldie buddy goodie here. This is a clip of Nick talking about Joe Kent, Tucker Carlson, Max Blumenthal, and Max's wife, and a hit piece that Max's wife put out on Nick Fuentes. This was from the summer before the Tucker interview, but I wanted to bring it up because it's been a while and people have kind of forgotten who Joe Kent really is. And that's the centerpiece of what we want to look at today, is who is the real Joe Kent. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the clip and then we're going to talk about why this matters and why it's important to bring it back up.
I called up Ryan Gerdusky, my friend. I called up a bunch of people that I was close to, and I said, who is good? Who is solidly America first? Who is a Trump ally that is worthy of my support and the support of the Groypers in the midterms in 2022? Because I would like to support them. I'd like to fundraise for them. I would like to get the Groypers on social media and on the ground to get them elected. I talked to somebody from the administration, not Ryan Gerdusky, and I'm not going to say who, but somebody passed me a list and they said, these are the guys that have Trump's back. And some of the names were Joe Kent, who is running in Washington State, J.D. Vance, who is running for Senate in Ohio, Blake Masters running for Senate in Arizona, Patrick Witt, who is running for Congress in Georgia, Gibbs, who is running for Congress in Michigan. And there were a number of other names too, but those are the ones that I remember, and those are the ones that I have in my notes from many, many years ago. Now, I got in touch with Joe Kent in 2021. We'll focus on him. I got in touch with Joe Kent through his campaign consultant, Matt Brainerd. Matt Brainerd was an exhibitor at my conference at AFPAC 2 in February 2021. This is a month after the events of January 6th and the Senate runoff. So I knew Matt Brainerd. I had a relationship with him. I was introduced to him by Michelle Malkin. She was friends with him. He was very involved in Stop the Steal, as was she. Matt Brainerd put me in touch with Joe Kent. I had a phone call with Joe Kent, I believe in the summer of 2021. And the phone call went like this. I called up Joe Kent, which, by the way, he does not deny, and I have text messages with him. I said, listen up, Joe. We want to support you in this election. I said, we want to help you build up your social media. We want to retweet your profile. We want the Groypers to support you. We want to door knock for you. We want to fundraise for you. I said, but here's the caveat. I said, and you can take this or leave it. I said, but we want to help you. We believe you're America first. We want to get you into office. I was very pro Joe Kent. I said, but here's the deal. You can't disavow me. I said, now, if you want our support, it's contingent on that. I said, because although I'd like to keep this discreet and we don't have to tell everybody that we're helping you, I said, but if the day ever comes that the left asks you about me for any reason, I said, you cannot disavow. I said, because if we start disavowing each other, this is how the right eats itself. And this is how the left wins. I said, today you're disavowing me. Tomorrow, somebody's disavowing you. What's more, I said, I don't want to help people. I barely have an operation. I don't want to use what little I have to help somebody if they're going to turn around and throw me under the bus. Because that's exactly what happened with Paul Gosar during AFPAC 2. He attended my conference and then he disavowed me, pretended like he didn't know me the next day. And there were other events too, but that was the big one. So I told Joe, I said, here's the deal. You cannot disavow. We'll support you. And Joe Kent said, not a problem. He said, and you know what? They call you a racist. He said, the Democrats are the real racist. And I said, yeah, that's great, Joe. But I mean, that's really the deal. And so it was. Joe Kent actually spoke out in favor of me. When I was put on the no-fly list in May 2021, he put out a tweet defending my rights. When I was banned on Twitter, I believe he said something also. So we had a working relationship. We had talked on the phone. I was fully behind him. We were supporting his social media. We had planned to go to Washington State to campaign for him, and he did defend me on social media as well. Fast forward to February 2022. I did my third AFPAC, my third conference. Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke there. Paul Gosar spoke there. The Lieutenant Governor of Idaho spoke there. It was a pretty big deal. We had 1,200 people. It got a lot of negative media attention because of things I said about Russia, comments I made about Hitler, other things. Now, Joe Kent did not attend AFPAC 3. He had no relation to AFPAC 3. But he was accused by somebody who was in the race in his district of having a relationship with me. Someone who was in fourth place put out a tweet. It got about 15 likes on Twitter. She said Joe Kent is like a Nick Fuentes type conservative. Joe Kent put out a tweet unprovoked on March 2nd, 2022. And I'll read to you what he said. He said, quote, "My opponents are again spreading lies about me. I strongly condemn Nick Fuentes' politics, especially in regards to our ally Israel. I ignored his invitation to speak at his recent conference in Orlando, and I am not aware of, nor do I accept any endorsement from him." Later, he said no one should be deplatformed or put on a no-fly list for their political ideas. I don't want Fuentes' endorsement due to his focus on race and religion. The fights he's picking are counterproductive. This is not my message of inclusive populism. So to be very clear, I talked to Joe Kent on the phone. I helped him, he helped me. And the agreement was I would help him discreetly. Contrary to what Tucker Carlson said, that my aim is to embrace people, to bring them down publicly, I told him, and we maintained a relationship in secret, in private, for almost a year before he, unprovoked, publicly went on the attack against me, condemning me completely on the basis of my opposition to our support for Israel, and because I talk about race and religion. He said that my version of America First, this is important, Kent said that my version of America First is condemnable because his version is inclusive, not focused on race and religion, and not critical of Israel. This is a very important concept, which is going to show up again and again and again on this show tonight. Joe Kent, who Tucker said is the epitome of a reasonable, credible, not crazy, not hateful, anti-neocon voice, Tucker said he is the archetype. He is emblematic of a credible, authentic opponent of the neocons. Tucker said that I attacked him in a targeted way, which was very conspicuous. I was put up to do this. I wrapped my arms around him to bring him down. Why? Because he's a credible voice fighting the neocons. Well, that is not the case at all. I did not wrap my arms around him. Contrary to what Candace said, it was not random. I did not target him, as Tucker said. We maintained a discreet relationship. I wanted to help him. And then he attacked me very hard over my views on Israel, on race and religion, and said that his version of America First is really inclusive populism. Now, I said on a stream days later, very intentionally, I said that there is something going on in the conservative movement right now. I said, you have authentic America First, which I represent, and then you have what I called at that time, Populism Inc. Populism Inc. People that claim to be like me, sound like me, but are not like me. And there's some things they have in common. I said, number one, they're all supported by Peter Thiel. Joe Kent got $1 million from Peter Thiel in 2022. J.D. Vance got $15 million from Peter Thiel in 2022. So did Blake Masters, got $15 million. Gibbs in Michigan got money from Peter Thiel. Patrick Witt in Georgia got money from Peter Thiel. That's number one. Number two, all of them were downplaying the significance of race and religion. All of them were very pro-Israel. I said, so something is going on. There is an attempt, just like with Con Inc., conservative Inc., just like with rhinos, there was an attempt in light of the recent rightward shift of the base to skin suit what is an emerging America First constituency in the GOP. And to say, we sound like Nick Fuentes and Michelle Malkin, we sound like Pat Buchanan, but really we're more of the same. We're pro-Israel, race blind, and have no religion. I said, so this is a deliberate usurpation. They are trying to usurp America First. Joe Kent is offering a competing version of America First that does not talk about race or religion and is pro-Israel. I said, and if he wins in Congress, he will be the right wing's AOC. He's young, he's handsome, he's well-spoken. He would be the most right-wing member of Congress. He would suck all the oxygen out of the room, and people like him and J.D. Vance, they would get to define what comes after Donald Trump. This new generation of representatives and senators who are coming up, funded by Peter Thiel, inclusive and pro-Israel, they would have the final word on what America First is going to be and how it will develop. And they will do it in a direction that's pro-Israel and all these other things. I said, that cannot be allowed to happen. He will become a danger, because if someone like that would disavow me, then there goes any possibility that someone like myself could influence Congress, or someone who has similar views to me could influence the government, because they will be swatted down by these usurpers who are telling the body politic, you don't want to listen to those racist, religious nut jobs, those anti-Israel people. Our America First is inclusive. I said, so he cannot win. What's more, I said, there needs to be a pain mechanism. I said, we need to make an example out of Joe Kent. He went out of his way to disavow me for being critical of Israel. And I said in a stream in 2022, after he said this, I stated my intentions openly. I said, we are going to make an example out of him in the same way that someone who goes against Israel is punished by AIPAC, so they think twice about criticizing Israel. I said, we need to do the opposite. If someone condemns someone that's critical of Israel and is pro-Israel, we need to make them afraid of losing their seat so that they will think twice. They will say, I don't want to be like Joe Kent. Maybe I will just leave Nick Fuentes alone. Maybe I won't be super pro-Israel next time because I don't want the Groypers to make me lose a close race. That was my intention. That was my stated, explicit intention back then. So we started up a campaign. We started up, contrary to what Tucker says, he said there were these super PACs. I started my own PAC. It was called Republicans Against Rhinos. The FEC filings are public. We spent about $100 on a website to develop and to buy a domain for a website. And the premise was Joe Kent is CIA. Now, the other thing about all these people is they have these connections to the CIA, which at that time I wasn't really aware of. But we found out that Joe Kent was a Green Beret who didn't even live in the United States for 20 years. He was involved as a contractor, as a mercenary with U.S. intelligence and the military. And so we actively went to Washington State and put up stickers and went to his town halls and went to his events to say, you can't trust this guy. This guy's in the CIA. This guy is of the deep state. Don't trust him. Don't vote for him. Now, in November 2022, Joe Kent lost by about 1%. He was favored to win. He lost by about 2,000 votes. The New York Times said it was the biggest upset of the 2022 midterm elections. We succeeded. We won.
So there's the setup. These are the conditions leading up to the real story that's about to unfold right now, and things are going to get pretty spicy. You're about to see the power structure that's operating behind Joe Kent and that props up figures like him and figures like Kash Patel and just sets them up to be an asset that serves a purpose, then gets burned out and is interchangeable with another asset right afterward. And Kash Patel's turn is over. He's done his job, and now they need to rotate in a new asset. One of those options is Joe Kent. please take a moment and hit that like button and go down below to the comments. Let me know what you think about Kash Patel, Joe Kent, and whether or not the perspective I just outlined is correct or crazy or somewhere in between.
Now, let's jump ahead to January 2023. This is a couple of months after the election. I get a call from a friend of mine, Lauren Witzke. Lauren Witzke was a lot closer to Michelle Malkin than I was at that time. And Lauren told me off the record, because Michelle didn't want me to air this out, but I did anyway. Lauren Witzke called me and said that Michelle Malkin got a phone call from Tucker Carlson, which she never does. Michelle characterizes her relationship with Tucker like this. She says that she texted Tucker from time to time to give him information or stories, and many times Tucker wouldn't even reply. Sometimes he'd give a thumbs up, sometimes he'd reply, but not really. They were not close. They never talked on the phone, over the phone like that, maybe texted now and again. But Michelle got a call from Tucker, and Tucker was asking about me, asking about my relationship with Ye, asking about the dinner at Mar-a-Lago, fishing for a quote, asking her about my opposition to Joe Kent, insinuating that I went to the dinner with Trump to make him look bad, insinuating that I took out Joe Kent because I'm part of this campaign. I thought it was very strange. He was shopping this hit piece. Fast forward a few weeks, I get a call from Anya Parampil. She is the wife of Max Blumenthal. They're both writers at The Gray Zone. Max Blumenthal is very close to Tucker Carlson. Now, more on him later. But I get a call from Anya Parampil, and she's writing a story about me. It turns out to be a 3-part hit piece, a massive hit piece that literally unfolded over multiple days in 3 parts and was centered on my opposition to Joe Kent. But it threw everything at me. Talked about January 6th, talked about Ye, talked about my comments on the Taliban, on women, on Jim Crow, on the Holocaust. But the thrust of the article was that I took out Joe Kent because my mission is to make the real America First anti-neocon people look bad. I was deployed, and that article was basically revenge for having made Joe Kent look bad. Now, what's interesting about the article is although it accuses me of trying to take out Joe Kent for no good reason, it does not include any mention of the fact that he disavowed me first. No mention of his tweets saying that he condemns me first and foremost because I'm anti-Israel. No mention of my stated intention, which I relayed to her over the phone, about why I tried to take out Joe Kent from the race. It gets better. Shortly after the piece came out, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who I think I can say now it was Bryson Gray because he has since copped to it. But Bryson Gray called me up. He's a black rapper. He's used to be pro-Trump. Now he's like a Christian rapper, a very good friend of mine. Bryson called me up and said, hey, man, and we don't usually talk either. At least we don't talk often. He called me up and said, hey, my wife just got a campaign from Influenceable. If you don't know what that is, Influenceable at that time, now it's very big, but at that time, it was a small outfit that pays conservative right-wing influencers to promote social media campaigns. So they will put out in a group text to a number of influencers that you all know, hey, if you put out a TikTok or a tweet pushing this link or this hashtag or this message, we'll give you $300 per tweet. And it has to say this, and it has to say it in this way. It's basically an undisclosed advertisement. They're like an advertising agency, but it's all under the table. So Bryson called me up and said, my wife, Shekinah, she got a campaign from Influenceable that is pushing the Gray Zone article calling you a Fed. It ran from February 15th to February 20th. The campaign was called Fed Fuentes, disassociate from the far right. And it instructed the influencers who received it to talk about why I wasn't arrested after January 6th, to talk about the comments I made around January 6th, to say that I have all the hallmarks of being a federal agent, Someone paid Influenceable $100,000 to push this campaign under the table. They gave this brokerage a vast sum of money, and that brokerage, Influenceable, texted in group text messages to influencers, we will pay you. You have to say Fed Fuentes. You have to link the article. You have to say these things. And none of that went reported. Now, there was one person that tweeted the hashtag before I got ahead of the story. It was somebody from New York, this short, bald Jewish guy who many people believe is sexually abusive. That's an allegation. One person tweeted it out before I went live. As soon as I got the campaign, I went live the same day and I blew up their spot. The CEO of Influenceable called me up and said, please stop attacking us. We pulled the campaign. Stop bringing attention to us. The Groypers are all after us. Is this not weird? What's weird here? Now, I want to go even a little bit further. Who wrote the article? Max Blumenthal's wife. For those that don't know, Max Blumenthal, he's Jewish. He's extremely critical of Israel. He's written for Media Matters. He's written for Russia Today, Iranian state media. He's very close with Tucker Carlson. Max Blumenthal is the son of Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal ran a private intelligence network for Hillary Clinton with CIA officers, mercenaries. When Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, he was basically an intelligence broker for her. He's been described as the hatchet man of Bill and Hillary Clinton, also Jewish. It is his son that is close with Tucker. It's his wife that wrote this article. That Tucker was shopping a month before it came out, fishing for quotes from Michelle Malkin. After the article was published, omitting any mention of how all of this started, how Joe Kent attacked me, how I stated why I was coming after him, and the rest of it, someone paid thousands and thousands of dollars to promote this article, and the idea that I'm a federal agent. That's where all of this came from. Now, there's a little epilogue to the story. And by the way, that's where all this came from. There's a little epilogue to the story. In August 2024, last year, Tucker said the CIA took out Joe Kent in his election in Washington state last year. But what's really interesting is that later in 2024, Donald Trump nominated Joe Kent for a counterterrorism position. And what he said about Joe Kent is that he is a CIA officer. Not only was Joe Kent a Green Beret and a mercenary, a contractor, as Tucker described him in his show with Candace this afternoon, Donald Trump blew the whistle on him. He was a CIA officer the entire time. So let's back this up and let's sum up the whole thing. A CIA officer. That was not public information until Donald Trump tweeted it last year after he won the election. Joe Kent, who was a secret CIA officer the entire time, got $1 million from Peter Thiel. He consulted with Ryan Girdusky. He runs for office in Washington state. Initially, I try to support him. I get disavowed for no good reason because I'm critical of Israel. I make him lose to make an example out of him. Tucker Carlson's friend, Max Blumenthal, the son of Bill and Hillary Clinton's hatchet man, writes a three-part hit piece about me with no mention of any of this, accusing me of being a Fed. Then that article is conspicuously promoted by an under-the-table, unofficial ad brokerage with the hashtag that I'm a Fed. Tucker says that Joe Kent, a CIA officer, was taken out by the CIA, who is presumably me. And then on his show today, Tucker Carlson says Joe Kent is the epitome of the anti-CIA, anti-neocon, authentic voice that is against hatred and is not crazy. Well, I got to tell you the truth. I am feeling a little bit crazy because that's gaslighting. That is gaslighting. The CIA took out a CIA officer. The gay kid in his basement, the weird gay kid in his basement is the CIA. taking out the CIA officer running for Congress that got $1 million from Peter Thiel, a CIA contractor, who, when he lost, was defended by Max Blumenthal, whose dad was an intelligence broker for Bill and Hillary Clinton. You know, it's like that meme of Spider-Man. Everybody's calling everybody else a Fed, but I think this one's pretty cut and dry. Who is CIA here? The CIA officer or the guy that made him lose the election? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a difficult question. So that is the story on Joe Kent. Now that leads to a larger conversation where Tucker Carlson says, of course, the big claim is that I am an inauthentic voice. I am going against the non-crazy, not hateful, anti-neocon America firsters epitomized by Joe Kent. He said the evidence that I am that is that I went against Joe Kent in a targeted way. Why did I do it? Because you got to take out guys like him. Well, if you can see that the reason I went against Joe Kent is because Joe Kent condemned me for being critical of Israel, I think you could see that it wasn't targeted because he's a credible anti-neocon voice. Actually, quite the contrary. It was because he's a CIA man who is pro-Israel, who was making a concerted effort to redefine America First to be pro-Israel, to be multiracial and religiously diverse or religiously tolerant or something. But let's go further on that claim. He says that if Joe Kent is not crazy, not hateful, then I am those things. I am crazy, I am hateful. Well, I would say, what's crazy and hateful about me? What's crazy and hateful about my views? He doesn't watch my show. He doesn't know me. I will tell you my views. I am Catholic. I am pro-white. I am critical of Jewish power. My views can be summarized by this. I think Jews have too much power. I think America has had too much immigration. Is that hateful? Is that crazy? I think those things are obvious to anyone paying attention. I think those things are descriptive. I think those things are true. Jews do have too much power. They're using it to benefit themselves. It is becoming detrimental and has been detrimental for Americans. And by the way, I'm not saying neocons. I'm not saying Zionists. I'm not saying Israel. I'm saying organized Jewry. And that encompasses the 50 plus major North American Jewish organizations. That encompasses the World Jewish Congress, the World Zionist Organization, the State of Israel, Israeli intelligence, the mega group. It encompasses all of it. I also say that America has too much immigration. America used to be a white country. It is becoming a not white country. That is fundamentally changing how America is. It's making America worse. You want the proof? Go to a city where it's already happened. LA became non-white before America has. Chicago, New York have become non-white before America has. Are those places you want to live? Are those places you'd like to raise a family? Are they safe? Are they prosperous? I don't think so. Am I crazy? Am I hateful for saying there's a racial basis for replacement migration? I don't think so at all. Am I hateful for saying that the Jewishness of Israel and the Mossad and AIPAC is kind of critical to why they're able to operate so effectively in America and that they have too much power? I don't think either of those ideas are hateful. I don't think either of those ideas are crazy.
So I was watching a clip with Tim Dillon recently where Tim was talking about Kash Patel and what an idiot he is, and he's right. But then he was raising Joe Kent as like the hero, like the counterforce to Kash Patel. And the reason I wanted to watch this clip is Nick thoroughly demonstrates that Joe Kent is a limited hangout, was designed to be a limited hangout from the beginning. He's not one of the good guys. He's just another distraction. He's a fake release valve for your frustration that you're meant to feel against Kash Patel, because Kash Patel has served his usefulness, which was to block the Epstein files and take the heat for blocking them for coming out. Kash Patel was designed to be a burned asset from the beginning, and his wick is at the end of its lifeline, if you will, politically. Now, Joe Kent is supposed to be the good guy all of a sudden who comes in and calls out Kash Patel. But as you just heard from Nick, Joe Kent is one of the bad guys. He's just another CIA operative, and he's here to corral the people who are frustrated with Kash Patel and lead them in the new direction. It's really just the Pied Piper strategy all day long with these people. They've got multiple layers of limited hangouts who are there just to step in when the first one has run its course and you realize that you got played once again. Joe Kent is just another one of those layers. If you think I'm wrong, then leave a comment and provide some counter arguments to the narrative Nick just provided, because he just thoroughly explained how Joe Kent is someone who you should never trust. And that about sums up the whole situation. The real strategy here is these people are just going to brute force you with propaganda. They're going to wait for you to forget. You and I are busy. We have real lives to live. We have day-to-day worries to be concerned with, living paycheck to paycheck. And so it's easy for us to forget. I mean, how do we have all the space in our heads to just follow all of these narratives and figure out who's lying, where? And so they just keep hammering at you with the propaganda. But it's been about 6 months since this came out and since Nick outed Joe Kent. And it's a good time to remember, now that Joe is being presented as a hero, whether it's by Tim Dillon or whatever, that he's not a hero. He's another one of the bad guys, and you're getting duped once again. If you enjoyed this content, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing, and helping this channel grow.